Okay, it's
Yep.
calling the meeting to order. I have 5:01. We'll start with introductions in just a moment. I want to be sure everybody's aware that John Mallow resigned from the board since our last meeting, which is why we were discussing board applications. My understanding is we have one application in with the city, and the city commission is going to have the appointment on their agenda at their first meeting in February, which I believe is next Monday, or maybe it's the following Monday. I'm not sure.
It's the 8th.
The 8th. Okay, so it's 2 weeks from yesterday. So they'll take it up then. And then the next time we'll have an opening is Andrew's appointment expires on May 1st of this year. So we will have another opportunity later in the spring, which might be a better time for people like Trent, who's at Northern, and the hybrid teaching is tough. Trying to do Zoom and in person at the same time is rough for people, I know. And so that spring opportunity might be a better fit for him. Plus, hopefully by the spring, things are gonna start looking better and people will start feeling better about the future and things like that. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and get started with introductions. I'll start, and board members need to say their name and the city and state in which they are physically located. So we'll start with board members, and after me, we'll go in alphabetical order. So it'll be Andrew, Patrick, and then Carol, alphabetical by last name. So I'm Ann Donahue. I'm in Marquette, Michigan. Andrew?
Verdalian, trustee in the Queen City, Marquette of the great state of Michigan.
Patrick Myron, Marquette, Michigan.
Carol Steinhaus, Marquette, Michigan, and I'll remind folks that I need to leave at 6 today. I've got a conflict with another meeting.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
And I know we have some library staff with us too. We're going to, only the library board members are unmuted during the course of the meeting. And if someone needs to speak, feel free to unmute yourself during public comment and other things like that. But other members or other attendees, please keep yourself muted while we're conducting business. So I'm going to start with approving the agenda. The only change that I have to the agenda is under new business board member comment. We're not actually going to review the first chapter of the new trustee manual. I just wanted that as a placeholder to talk about it. So we're not going to talk about the fact that we're going to start reviewing it after we
We're
get
going to start talking about it.
Yeah, I know, but I want to wait until we get a new member on board and just start at
Absolutely.
the beginning with them.
Yeah. And there's hard copies coming, you said too, so.
Yeah, if we want them. So.
Perfect.
But does anybody else have any changes or additions to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
This is Ann. I also vote aye. Motion passes 4-0. Next up, we need to approve the minutes of the previous 2 meetings. And Andrea noted on the November 17th meetings at the bottom, it says respectfully submitted by Patrick Myron, President.
I gave myself a promotion.
Do you want to take over this meeting?
I didn't know, not at all. Hey, don't get me wrong. No.
That was my
yeah,
fault. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
I thought I fixed it, but again, I'll take the compliment. We'll fix it.
Okay.
And I have a question on this.
Yep.
Since are we passing both board minutes together? And if so, can I vote because I was not present at the November meeting?
Right. I'm so confused on this.
I think the thing to do then is, let's see, you were not present at the November meeting, so we'll pass the motions separately.
Okay,
And Andrew, you'll abstain from voting on the November meeting minutes.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. Are there any other changes or additions to the November minutes?
I move approval of the November minutes with the correction of Patrick's title.
Oh, I'm demoted now. Okay. Well, didn't last long, but boy, it was sweet. Okay.
Patrick, I think Patrick has to second, doesn't he?
Oh, I don't have to do anything, but yes, this is Patrick. And I will second. I will second it.
Okay, and now I'll take a roll call vote. Patrick, how do you vote?
All right.
Carol, how do you vote?
Aye.
This is Anne. I also vote aye. So that passes 3 with 1 abstention.
Mhm.
And then I motion to approve the December minutes.
Second.
Okay. Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Patrick?
All right.
Carol?
Aye.
This is Anne. I also vote aye. So that passes 4-0.
And just because Carol was excused from the December, would she be an abstention?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
Thank
see,
you.
There we are.
I forgot that.
I
Okay.
thought I missed that one, but no.
I don't mean to be Mr. Technical.
No,
I
no,
just,
no,
No,
no.
no.
I had totally forgotten that. I
Yeah.
was out of state. You're right. I changed my vote to abstain, if I can do
Okay.
that.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
catch,
And
Andrew.
This,
Thanks,
yes,
Andrew.
thank you. I knew.
Do we need a different
I will
person to second?
second. This is Patrick. I will second that motion from Andrew.
Yep. All right. And now we're just all going to come to all the meetings. No, I'm just kidding. Because you people are killing me.
Oh, dear.
Just kidding. I know we all have to miss sometimes. It's just the way it goes.
Okay.
Okay. Are we all set on the minutes? I think.
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Do we have a special presentation tonight?
No, but I did want to let everyone know that next month we'll start back up with department heads making presentations at meetings.
Uh-huh.
So especially with new board members coming onto the board, I thought it was important to, like we're doing with the trustee manual, go through the staff and allow everyone a little bit of time to get in front of the board. So we will start that again in February.
Do we?
And Andrea, I've switched my calendar. Which Tuesday of the month is it we meet?
The third Tuesday.
Okay, so in the future, it will not be in conflict with the whatever the group is tonight at 6 o'clock at the library, the public policy or something.
Except, well, how long is that one going on? I don't remember how long that program is.
Well, at any
months.
rate,
Yeah,
we're conflicting tonight. That's not even the other meeting I'm going to, but I think we have switched. The board is meeting on a different night than normal, right?
Correct.
yes.
Tonight. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And we do have a couple oddballs in 2021 with the September meeting being the fourth Tuesday of the month, and we moved the December, or I'm sorry, did I say September? September
Yeah.
meeting being the fourth Tuesday of the month, and then the December meeting is also on and off.
Okay, just so it's not every month. That's fine. I want to do both. Thank you.
Yep,
and just confirming that's February the 16th, our next meeting.
Correct.
I believe
Thank
so,
you.
yes.
Yep.
Look at a calendar.
Is our new head of maintenance going to do a special presentation at some point?
Yes,
Okay, good. I'd love to meet him.
he is
Which-
wonderful.
Now that the library is open again, I can come in and do that hopefully. But anyway, moving on. We're going to get this meeting underway, I promise. We have a Township Advisory Council report from Jan tonight. Hi, Jan.
Is Jan muted?
She is muted. Jan, if you can hear us, you're muted.
Aha,
There we go.
Yay.
There she
Okay,
goes.
sorry.
Oh,
Can you see me?
No, your
Can't see
video
you,
is
but we
off.
can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'm in Florida. I'm in Sarasota, where it's a beautiful 75 degrees.
Oh, hush.
Okay, bye, Jan.
It's a little chilly today. Anyhow, I read through that lengthy packet that Andrea so kindly sent us. And I was pleased to note with all the statistics that Chocolate has a relatively high account in circulation and registered users and book drop-off. So I was really pleased to note that. And also I wanted to report that I've had several friends contact me and tell me how happy they've been with curbside pickup and how wonderful and friendly and helpful the staff is when they call. So that's all I have, but stay warm out there.
Well,
thank
thanks
you,
for
Jan.
joining us, Jan. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks,
it.
Jan. And I would agree with what you've heard. That's all I hear too, is just how, how well the library has handled all this. And I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but they just opened yesterday for the public again for the first time in quite some time. So,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Yep. Enjoy your time in Florida. We'll see you when it warms up, I guess.
Okay, well, we're not doing much. We go for a daily walk and that's it.
Oh, nice.
Hey,
Sounds lovely.
yeah, it does.
All right, moving on to the financial reports. Hi, Rick.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Rick.
As I
No.
usually start out.
Nope.
He's not talking to you, Rick.
Okay, so I'm competing with a dog here.
I know.
So anyways, is there any particular aspect of either the financial reports or my comments that the board would like me to clarify or address?
I
Rick,
have a question. Whoops.
Go
I
ahead.
have a
Carol.
question, Rick, about the air handling system. I guess I made the assumption that the fellow fixed whatever the problem was, and because you guys found this, you saved us money in terms of an energy waste. Is that correct, that he was able to fix whatever the issue was?
Right, yes. So we got a new actuator installed. They actually, I think they discovered or came over on a Wednesday morning. I think by Friday we had it back up and operational. So
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if it was a bad part or they just had been set wrong or what the issue was, but anyway.
no, but what I was trying to get across was that I kind of jumped in there and started looking at the control system. So I got a little bit of understanding, and now John is spending considerable time learning it and went through a couple hours of training through AC&C and is getting really comfortable in understanding the power of the control system. And the reason I put that in my notes is that control system really does give you a very clear picture, if you know what you're looking at, for knowing that the system is working efficiently and correctly, or that it's not. And so then you can try and figure out what's going on. And
Okay.
ACC is a great partner that is willing to jump on the system, because they can be on there remotely and verify our assumptions, whether they're correct or we're missing something. So
Okay.
that was
good.
kind of just an example. Another one that I kind of forgot about is Heather's office. Was kind of the same thing. We couldn't figure out why her room the heat kept coming on, and we kept cranking her thermostat down, and it was actually not making any difference. And so then we got ACC in, and what they determined is her thermostat in her room was never wired to her baseboard heating. So my room was controlling her room entirely. And so it was and they were great. Tom came over and worked on that for about 3 hours. And actually that was a gratis effort, because we're not sure if it was a problem that's been going on for 20 years, but for sure wasn't corrected with the upgrade. So that's another example of the control
Okay.
system. And Heather actually started that by just complaining, my office is always hot. Can you do something? So then
Yeah.
I cranked it down and she got no results. And it's like, well, something isn't working right here. And so that was.
Well, you guys are sharper than a bunch of PhDs at NMU. It took us a couple years to figure that out with neighboring offices in Cohotas Hall. So
Yeah.
congrats, actually.
Yeah, and John discovered a couple more little scenarios today that we were talking about that we got to figure out what's going on. They're pretty minor areas, but still could be an issue with it not either performing right, or the graphics that we primarily use for analyzing situations just aren't updated correctly. So he'll be working
Thank
on
you.
that.
That was my only question.
Andrew, did you have some questions?
Rick, I had 2 questions. First
Okay.
of all, that air handler 2 situation, was that covered by warranty, or did we have to pay anything for that?
No, that actually was not part of the renovations that took place 2 years ago now. So that was the original actuator that was 20 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, as I say, they're at a point now. Tom thought one other actuator has been replaced on the system. He couldn't remember which unit it was. So 2 of the 4 actuators have been replaced. But in talking to Tom, he was saying that an actuator usually lasts about 20 years. And so,
Okay.
again, that's something we'll kind of keep an eye on. And the issue with air handler 1 is pretty minor, but actually we're going to be looking into that a little bit further. And that potentially could be a warranty situation. We're not sure yet. We got a camera that I'm borrowing from Jesse Roberts to get up there and view up to see what's going on. So as to why that return air is colder than it should be. So
Those the other 2 actuators, then, are they old actuators, or are they replacing?
Right, all of the actuators are tied in with the original building of that addition. So they're all 20 years old, except for, as I say, Tom's pretty sure one other actuator has been replaced, and then now this one. So we think there's still 2 that are 20 years old.
If they go within 20 years, do we just want to replace the other 2 before they cause a larger problem?
I've got a lot of confidence in John that he's going to be watching these things, and he won't miss it. He'll pick up. It's pretty obvious now that you know what you're looking for, because it actually creates this strange situation where the air that's going out, discharged into the system, is warm, and in this case the cold air that's coming in. So how is it getting heated up to 65 degrees when it's over on this side of the air handler? It's showing it as 52 degrees, and that's what we saw. Is it's like, okay, well, how is it getting warm when the heat valve isn't coming on? And
Okay.
that's what the actuator does, is it controls the heat valve on it to heat the air up. So that was the obvious thing, is how is the graphic showing one thing without the heat valve coming on? So, and then it created some other things.
And then my next question is about, it goes back to your comments, and that part of that we've spent 24% of our budget within the last 25% of the fiscal year.
Mhm.
And that a large reason for that budget being lower is because we've had some open positions.
Correct.
As we move forward and those positions get filled, are we going to be in any jeopardy of not being within budget?
Great question. So I just looked at that. Through January, we're still, our wages are still under what a normal two period budget would be.
Right.
So we're still about $1,000 a pay period under, but we still are slightly understaffed. And then the other factor that comes into play is if we get back to normal hours, that's going to increase the wage component too. Right now, we're running 8 hours less per week. But we built almost a $30,000 cushion. So I haven't done the numbers yet to see, you know, how long that would take. Even, I guess even $1,000 higher per week would, so 2,000, you know, would give us, so we're pretty well covered unless we get dramatically higher. And I don't think we're going to see that. So I think we're going to be pretty good on wages. I guess in the comments, I hope the point came across that some of the cash position and revenue positions are strictly timing issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so like
that was-
Carol Paul Trust transfer after the great November, I talked to Eric down at Mark Aho's and we were in agreement. We should do the transfer now and take advantage of it with the potential for the market to actually reverse. It didn't do that in December, but it still was the prudent thing to do at that point to
Agreed.
pull out some of that great gain we had in November. So that's part of the reason for it. And then on the revenue side, all of those market gains that are reflected in the dividends actually are the reason why that particular revenue line is, you know, 45,000 or whatever it is ahead of where it was last year. So and that could, you know, hopefully that won't all disappear, but I mean, it can, because the bulk of it is market gains, or if we have market losses in the future, that would take away from that line item. So,
Right.
so it's a nice picture, but there's some caution to the picture too, is what I was trying to get across is, and
You'll have to double check the numbers to make sure that we don't.
and I'll be watching them. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so the one thing that just came through and was deposited today was a penal fines. And so that was 3,926, and normally that's $7,000 to $8,000. So we're seeing about 60% of what we normally see in penal fines coming through each month. And so potentially we're over budgeted by 20,000 there. So again, and that's, I think a lot of it's just the fact that there isn't much activity going on. And when there isn't a lot of activity, there isn't a lot of tickets being written. So I think that's what's contributing to that. But how much longer is that going to be the normal is the challenge to try and figure that out.
Yeah.
But I would anticipate with the amended budget, we'll probably look to take that number down a little bit. It's probably at 80,000, probably a little bit too high. I would guess it needs to be dropped to like 65 or 70,000. So that's kind of another note. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to bring to the board's attention. That's pretty much it. As I say, the The operational revenues, of course, down because we haven't been open. So it'll be interesting to see whether we start to get closer to budgeted numbers there as we start to see some opening up of the library and more patrons in. So I think that's the other aspect of it.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Rick?
Oh, just thanks for holding it all together.
Yeah, thanks.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
catching that heating fluke.
Yeah, that's really good news. May I have a motion to approve the bills?
This is Patrick, so moved.
Second, Andrew.
That was Andrew. I'll do a roll call vote. Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Patrick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carol, how do you vote?
Carol, you're muted.
You're muted.
No, you're still muted, Carol. We still can't hear you.
There we go.
Sorry, I got off screen. I vote aye.
This is Ann. I also vote aye. So motion to approve the bills passes 4-0. Also, I inadvertently skipped the public comment before we had the Township Advisory Council report. So we need to have our first public comment of the meeting. So I'll just wait a minute and see if anyone would like to contribute or have a question. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Next up are the board action items, and we're going to start. We have several policies. We have one to approve, which we reviewed in November, I believe it was. And then we have 4 that we're just going to review. So the first one is the remote work policy. Exhibit B, Gov 10. I'm very excited about this policy manual. You have no idea how I love organization, so this makes me really happy.
Yeah, it's making me happy too. So I'll show you a little bit about a little bit of how the policy will look when we get a little further in, but some of the background information about this, we did review this policy at the November meeting. I did add in a schedule that, okay, let me get down here. I did add in a schedule that shows the percentages of feasible work from home by job description. That was the one thing that came up in the training that I attended on December 18th regarding remote work policies. They were pretty clear that by job title and not by general classification. Like we couldn't say all of our part-time staff can work, 20% from home or something like that. So I did go through and detail it out by job title. And if there was the same job title with full-time staff and part-time staff, they're on separate lines. So you'll see there's a few duplication, I guess primarily the reference assistants, because we do have full-time reference assistants and part-time reference assistants. So these numbers are really tied to what is feasible when we have some level of in-person service in the building. So that could be even just curbside. This is not necessarily what we are currently doing because we are, of course, now with being open to walk-in traffic, it's less feasible for people to work from home because we need more bodies in the building to be able to run the different programs and services that we're running. But this is the most that we could possibly do work from home wise. If we're open in any capacity. If we're not open in any capacity, it's full shutdown, then it's a whole different number structure. And I didn't know that it was worth duplicating this table for any situation, because the likelihood of going back to a complete shutdown where everyone is told to, mandated to stay home, I think is really unlikely at this moment, given all the economic issues and whatnot that's out there with where we are right now. I don't see them going back that far, but if it happens, we'll deal with it at that point. But this is, I felt like, a pretty good place to start and gave a pretty good overview of what could potentially be expected from our staff. You'll notice there are very few with high percentages, because we have found in doing remote work that it is very difficult to run services like curbside and even take and make crafts. And I would say Samantha could probably speak a little bit to reference services too, but I think it's even hard to do that kind of thing from home. We can't rely on all of our staff having the technology that they need from home to be able to do reference chat, and the phone call forwarding thing was okay. But again, it's just real tricky when you've got people from home doing some of the services that we are. So I feel like these percentages are pretty much the most we could expect our staff to be able to do from home. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the rest of this policy. I did try to really detail out the difference between emergency situation work from home versus other situations that might warrant a work from home option. This is really tied to our pandemic policy. So if in some future time we are past the need for a pandemic policy, I truly hope that that time comes. I would encourage the board to review this policy again and decide if this is something that we would want to stick with or not. I think it's probably a good policy to have long-term, because there are situations and there are job titles here at the library that I think can work from home in a reasonable way part of the time. So if we had somebody who had a medical issue and they were going to need to be off for FMLA leave or something like that, but they would be able to work part of the time from home, I think that's a reasonable option to consider. So there are some things like that we may want to look at as we're past the pandemic as a long-term policy. But for right now, this is what we needed to make sure that we were meeting the MDHHS and MIOSHA requirements. So that's where I think we should start.
Looks good.
Andrea,
Yes.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
So on the percentages, the percent of hours feasible to work remotely, would that ever come back to hurt us, where somebody might say, look, I can only do, according to the policy, I can only do 50% or 10% or 90% at home, so you can't give me anything else?
No, Andrew, I guess how I see those two numbers is that, the percentage that isn't in column, I guess, 3 would be the time that you would need to be on site doing that work. Am I mistaken? No?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like, well, boy, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's sort of a very good estimation of how much of your current work in the current times could be done more than adequately off-site, and then the other you would need to be on-site in order to complete those tasks or duties.
Correct.
Okay, so the teen assistant, for example, could do 25% of their work at home, and if some kind of situation resulted, you can say, okay, well, we can have you do basically 8 hours a week of your 32 hours at home, but yeah, the remainder you'd have, the other 24 hours you would have to do here at the library.
Correct.
Is that how I should read it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all
Yep.
right. Because the only reason I ask is that I know when you and I chatted on the phone when things, back in March and April, it seemed like you were busier than when you were, normally at the library. And
And that was during a complete shutdown. So there was
Yeah.
no option for people to be on site.
okay,
And I will say that, going back to the conversations we had in March, we had really no idea what was reasonable for various positions here at the library to actually
Yep.
work remotely. So we were in a position to be able to continue to pay staff their full hours, regardless of if they ever worked an hour. Now, most of our staff was able to find some way to work from home in some capacity, but I think realistically, if we were back in a situation where there was a complete shutdown and we needed to consider the furlough process, this document might actually be helpful in determining which positions are furloughed, which positions should have a partial furlough versus a full, just some of those questions that we talked about a lot and was very difficult to come to a general consensus on, because so many of our jobs are vastly different and responsibility and workload and feasibility to do the work from home. So I see this as something that could potentially help us if we were in a situation like that again, and making decisions like that. Again, hopefully not.
so just to follow up then on the furlough, and just tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. If we were looking at furloughing, would go, oh, well, with the communications coordinator and the adult program coordinator being 90 to 100% able to work at home, no, we wouldn't furlough them. But wow, this Bruce being the assistant director, he can only get 15%. He would be more likely to be furloughed.
Well, this is when we're open in some capacity, Andrew.
Okay.
So I don't think we would be looking at a furlough situation if we're open in some capacity and we've got staff on site.
Okay.
No.
And I don't think they'd be furloughing Bruce.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
would not
Bruce.
want Bruce furloughed. That would not be good. But I didn't.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm not quite
You got a point
sure
you're making.
how to understand all the percentages.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get my mind around it.
And I'm not saying that this would be a direct correlation. If we were talking furlough, it would be a place to start conversation. Because
Okay.
again, this schedule was created under the
Assumption.
umbrella of we are open in some capacity and providing services on site with staff on site and some staff working remotely. So given the current circumstances, what I have found during this whole process is when I go back and review our pandemic policy, I think, wow, wasn't that novel? Such a novel time. All the sea when we had no idea what was going on. That's
How quaint.
so quaint. I did the TV6 interview this morning and they were asking me about the different stages. And I was kind of like, we're so far beyond the whole stage thing. It almost means nothing at this point because things changed so much from March and what the
Yes.
information we had when we created these policies. And the stages are great because they have a structure and give us some kind of idea of what can be expected under each
Right.
thing. But so much of it is we're just figuring it out still as we go, which is kind of
Yeah,
unfortunate.
It's been an interesting exercise in change, as is trying to keep track of signing up to get a vaccination. Which version are we doing today as opposed to 2 days ago? I served I answered the phone lines for the Marquette County Health Department. If you have nothing to do, that's exciting. Because there are people that when they finally get through to a human, everything about them leaves their head. This poor elderly woman just could barely even remember her name, let alone anything else. When she got hold of a person, she was so
Yeah.
stunned. But we're learning a lot about change, and I appreciate the documentation, Andrea, though I pray we never have to look at it again, but basically to use it anyway.
Mhm.
Andrew, did you have another question?
No, that was it. I just wanted to explore those percentages to make sure they don't hamper us in any way.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think they will. And I guess the other thing that I would say is the board always has the opportunity to modify policy. So if we find that there's some reason to change these, we can always go back and review them.
Oh, Andrea, I'm sitting here just looking at this page. There is a date on this document, but depending on what happens with technology, those percentages could be very different 2 or 3 years from now. But as long as there's a date on the policy, we'll assume that this was feasibility as of 2021 or whatever, right?
Right. And
Okay.
that's actually why I didn't include this scale or this table as a part of the policy itself. Because I wanted, it's an addendum related strictly to the pandemic and the qualification that we're open to service at some point, in some capacity on site. So,
Well, if it's a freestanding addendum, I wonder if it should have a date on it and the statement about this is assuming we are open to some degree based on our experiences of 2020, 2021, or something to that nature.
I think that's a good suggestion. I think that would help clarify some of Andrew's questions too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, part of it's covered in the footer, but not entirely. So yeah,
Right.
that wouldn't hurt. That wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Are there other questions or comments or clarifications?
I forget where we are. Are we voting on this one?
Yes, this is the one that we're
Yeah,
gonna,
for approval.
Okay. Okay. So are we ready for a motion?
I am,
And can we, Andrea, can you get me to the page that has the language on it,
Yes.
please?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to move then that the Board of Trustees of the Peter White Public Library, let me start over, I'm sorry. The Board of Trustees of the Peter White Public Library moves to approve the remote work policy as presented. The policy becomes effective on January 26, 2021.
This is Patrick. I will second.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Patrick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
This is Anne. I also vote aye. The motion passes 4-0. So I would actually like to skip ahead because, I mean, I know Carol has 15 minutes left, but I'd like to go to action item E, the board member conflict of interest policy.
Gotcha.
Good one.
That one is the most substantive, in
Yes.
my opinion. So I want to make sure Carol has time to ask questions or give input.
I appreciate you having this. It just frankly never occurred to me. But for example, it's something we have to sign every year at NMU or review and say if we have some conflict, and I'm glad it came up. I'm not aware that anybody has any huge things that conflict, but I think for purposes of policy, this is a good thing to have. I read through it and thought it was pretty complete. I couldn't think of anything else myself.
The only changes on number 13 of the policy, and then on the form that we each have to fill out, it says currently it says a trustee shall notify the president or vice president of the board of possible conflict of interest. We don't have a vice president, as you all know. We're a very small
Oh,
board.
I'll just sign the minutes, the vice president.
There we go.
So,
But
that's
Andrea and I
problem solved.
talked
I
about
wouldn't worry
this.
about it.
Andrea and I talked about this earlier, and we think a good way to cover bases, even, better, is to have the president or the library director,
Director, yes.
yeah,
Ah, good.
notified. And that way,
Yeah.
it's, you know, somebody who was employed by the library as well as a board member. They're both
Sure.
notified.
That's good.
Okay. So this is a first reading. We just need to talk about it. Are there questions or comments?
I have a comment or a question, but I'll defer to Carol because I know time is.
No, I'm fine, Andrew. Go ahead. Thank you.
Mhm. So, Andrea, when I read over this policy, I just went back to when we had to make those decisions about how to proceed on the boat desk for the children, for the youth section. And we had a discussion, and because of the size of the community, we were kind of in a situation where we could know one or more of potential contractors or businesses, and therefore under these guidelines have a conflict of interest, and we wouldn't be able to proceed as a board because the size of community would result in different people knowing, the potential for people to know a number of the competitors or the businesses.
Sure.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. That was one of those situations where I think we had two board members who felt like they weren't sure they wanted to vote on the selection process because they personally knew the
Yeah.
contractors.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
I
a
know,
tricky one.
What
It is
number of
tricky.
the,
I've thought about that a lot since, and like, how can there be policy that effectively lets you, and I don't know how that is
what
procedure.
number of the policy are we discussing here? Is it actually, I guess I didn't think about it, so I'd like to see what you're referring to.
Well,
Could be under number 1 or 3.
right, yeah, most
or
of them.
4
Mhm.
or 5,
Well,
possibly
not
6.
necessarily, because really what we're talking about is if you or your family is going to profit directly from a decision, which is different than I have
Yeah.
a friend who does
Right.
woodworking
Yeah,
and I feel conflicted about voting for him because he's my friend.
well, that's not a
different than
gift.
then it's my husband, and I personally am going to profit from this decision. I think there's a distinction there because
Yeah, yeah,
while we may feel conflicted because it's our friend, are you going to profit from it? Is it going to directly benefit your family? I think that's a little bit different, but I completely hear what you're saying.
That's number 6.
well, and yeah, I guess being open and obvious and transparent about the fact that, okay, yeah, Mike Potts is pretty much my best friend, and he's got a bid in, and he's willing to make a desk out of a boat, or vice versa. So, yeah, I do agree. There is a separation. I think as long as it's presented that way, I still think it would be awkward, personally, for me to vote.
Right, and I think we can address those issues as they
Yeah.
come up. I mean,
Yeah.
this does get a little bit sticky. I agree.
Right.
But I think the point of having a policy is the transparency. And
Sure,
so that we
absolutely.
are all aware of it,
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
and we do have some guidelines in place to follow.
Mhm.
So Andrew, something that comes to mind is, there's this form that board members are supposed to complete every year. And none of you would have known to fill out that you had a conflict of interest with somebody to build a boat desk, because
Right.
that was something that came up kind of at the end of the renovation project.
Yeah.
But I do think having a policy like this just makes it clear that it's important that that's disclosed at the time that something like a vote like this would come up. But it does make it a little tricky as far as if the relationship is close enough where you feel like you need to abstain. And what if we have 3 out of 5 board members abstaining because they have personal connections to a contractor or whatever?
Right. Yeah. I think it's probably, yeah, there is some sort of border between, ethical and emotional. And
I would suppose if that ever happened, we could form a subcommittee of other people or something. It's not like we really don't have the opportunity as library board members to make our relatives wealthy or whatever. We're not awarding a whole bunch of grants, generally speaking, or bids or whatever word I'm looking for. So I appreciate the way, as I recall, it was Patrick and it may have been John. I don't remember for sure.
What
When
was
the
John,
boat thing
Patrick,
came
and
up.
I?
yeah,
okay.
the three of us were, so
And
but
I
only because we
appreciated-
had personal connections,
That's
so.
right. I appreciated the way you guys said, well, I know so-and-so or this or that. But there's an issue of trust here too, that I believe you can do a fairly good job of separating the issue from the person or the friendship or whatever. And, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars either. So I'm glad to see this policy. And I think if a similar thing comes up in the future, we can work around it like we did with the boat.
Sure.
I was comfortable with that whole situation at the time.
Does that help, Andrew?
It does. I just to clarify, I think the policy is good, but perhaps we may want to incorporate into this policy the understanding that that situation may arise, and the board may. We want to disclose our position, but the board may still need to progress with decisions.
Right.
Something to that effect.
That's a good
idea.
suggestion. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, because I mean, that's part of we're a tiny little board. I mean, I don't know of boards that are this small, generally speaking. And it's a relatively small community, so.
Right.
So that, we're not in violation of the policy.
Right. Yeah, that's a good
Well,
suggestion.
I guess, yeah, my whole thing is like, that is where you could run into trouble. And
Mhm.
then all of this would have to be looked at. If the person that wasn't awarded the bid, which I can't imagine that this would ever happen, it's the library, right?
Oh, you'd be surprised what happens.
Well, I know, but still, I know plenty of jerks, and I don't know anyone that would do that.
Right.
That
Lucky
is
you.
the situation. That is the situation that would bring about some of the, well, let's take a look at, who's doing what. Oh, so yeah, I agree. Something on that where, progress needs to happen.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good addition, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, with that, folks, I'd better leave. I need a break between one meeting and t'other, but I'll see you
Yep.
all next month, which did we say was February 16th?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody.
all
Thanks,
right.
Carol.
Bye, Carol.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye, Carol.
Are there other questions, comments, or suggestions about the board member conflict of interest policy?
My a tangential comment based on a previous conversation we had. Now that I see Bruce is on, Bruce, I in no way want you to be furloughed, and I'm not advocating for that.
Thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Duly noted.
None of us want that.
No. All right, let's go back up to board action item B, which is library establishment and authority policy.
So this just details out all of our establishment documentation. And a lot of this was available in our library history on our website, which is great. It was a little out of date, and Bruce and I kind of went back and forth trying to dig up the most current information because it's still referenced to certain sections of the original city charter within the charter itself, even though the whole section has moved within the charter. So I wanted to clarify where its current position was and the establishment charters section as well. So that's what the footnotes are about. Just saying that, originally, well, I guess the first footnote is different, but I just wanted to give a little bit more information about current location of the library's establishment documentation within the city charter. I do think this is an important policy to have. It's nice for it to be as a part of the history on the library's website, but there have been issues with township boards in the past, and the membership on the library board is really what it comes down to. So I do think it's important that this is a policy and that it's very clearly available on our website and in our policy manual, just so that it's very clear that we are in fact a city library, and we do have township contracts. So that is why the board is set up the way it is. All 5 positions, a very, very small library board for sure. And then just making sure that all of the various acts and section numbers are updated.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see this included, because I mean, when I first started, thinking about applying to be on the library board, that was something that I wanted to know, what is, because I'm one of those, when I get on a board, like I read the bylaws and stuff like that. I'm a policy nerd, I know, but
Takes all the fun out of it. But yeah.
there you go. But anyway, I like to have everything in one place like this, so I'm happy to see this. But are there questions or comments about a library establishment authority?
Is there anywhere in there about the trustees, and maybe in one of those footnotes, which I didn't even know that people still did that, about having to live within the city limits, or that's just part of the city, part of this whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's part of the city charter.
Perfect.
And that, I believe, is also included in our bylaws.
Well, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, she reads all
We
that
did it.
stuff. So.
I did send our bylaws off to Ann Siernick
Thank you.
for review, just because it's been several years since it's been reviewed. I think the last revision was 2014. And I'm a little concerned about the section of our bylaws that talks about what has to be disclosed in order to present or speak in public comment during a board meeting. I don't know that we enforce that part of the bylaws, but I am concerned about that still being a part of our bylaws, given the current pandemic open door or Open Meetings Act guidelines. It's very clear that people can sit in on meetings and not disclose who they are. So I just wanted her to review it because I wanted to make sure that we weren't breaking any
Sure.
Open Meetings Act guidelines with that particular section of the bylaws.
Good. Okay, next up is the philosophical principles policy. Yay.
So, as I mentioned a couple of times about these policies, I did steal shamelessly from the Clinton Macomb Public Library. They had a lot of good policy all out there on their website, laid out just how I want ours to be. So a couple of the policies are really taken very liberally from their policy manual. This one I thought was really good because it does link us to the ALA guidelines regarding the Bill of Rights, the ALA Bill of Rights, and the right to read, and all of the ethical statements that ALA endorses. And there have been libraries kind of with their feet held to the fire over this last year with regard to their support to different movements regarding culture and race. And I think it's really important that this is just clearly stated that we support everyone's right to access the library and their right to read. And that's why we build our collections the way that we do. So I think it's a pretty important base structure to have to our policy manual. So that's essentially what this one says.
Absolutely.
I did have one possible addition to this, Andrea.
Sure.
Would we want to include a bullet to uphold the state of Michigan and the United States Constitution?
Yeah, I think we could certainly do that. I could even put it in as a footnote.
Okay, well, I don't know if the footnote would have the same power as, it would same impact as a bullet.
I understand. I do like bullets better.
Do a footnote too. Say see below or read here.
Yeah, I think we could probably, I don't really want to put it under the bottom section because that's really related to the American Library Association.
Sure.
Probably just need its own section.
Sure.
Right under that.
Good idea.
Yep, can do.
Other questions
And-
or comments?
Do we want to add something about outreach? Because, and the only reason I bring that up is because the library, I feel, has done a tremendous amount of outreach during this time of the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, I think the library did I know the library was doing outreach to classrooms, including mine. And it's something that we already do. I don't know if we need to include it.
That to me
Okay.
is, that's like an activity as opposed to a principle.
Okay.
Well, I'm not, I'm trying to think. I mean,
I also know it's important to the townships as well.
right.
Let me think on that one.
Yeah, I just throw that out there.
There might be a way to, and there very well might be an ALA policy related directly to outreach that could just be listed right in with everything else. So I'll take a look and see what I can find there.
That would be good. Thank you. Because yeah, I mean, it is actually it can be philosophical as well.
Yep.
It covers both. Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Well, okay, one more then comes to mind. And this is totally related to the pandemic, so it's totally optional, and I'm not attached to it. It's just the idea of health, because we've had several philosophical discussions about the health of our employees, the health of our patrons, making sure that how materials are distributed, especially at this time. I'm okay if it's not included, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see a place for that.
Let me do a little digging on that one though, too.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if ALA says anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, there has been a recent trend in conversation and publication in the library community about the health of staff in this time, and not only like physical health, but emotional and mental health as well. And some of it being related to the pandemic and some of it being related to just the drastic changes in library service and the expectations of library employees over time. And so it might be a direction that ALA is heading. I don't know for sure, but I'd be happy to look.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One more, but I do think this could potentially be covered by access as well as intellectual freedom, but equity.
I'm making my notes.
Yeah. Other comments or questions, suggestions? Okay, moving on to holiday observances. This is another one I'm happy to see this added here. I mean, I agree with Andrea in terms of I don't like duplication either, but this actually feels like it belongs in more than one place.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think we've really relied on the union contract for determining what our holiday schedule is, and that's absolutely fine for the holidays, but we always have the extra dates where we have either partial closing or full closing for staff training or donor party. And it's just not really clear how those closings take place, even though it's part of our annual cycle of review. So I did feel like it should be clarified in policy.
Yeah, that's good. Any
On-
questions?
On this one, going back to our philosophical values, right now we have included Easter and Christmas, which are Christian holidays. Do we need to be more, do we need to encompass more denominations? And so that we are aligned with our philosophical values.
Well, Easter is celebrated on Easter, though. What else would you call it?
Are you looking to add more? Closures for-
It was something that when I looked at the philosophical values, you know, and I looked at this, it's like, well, I don't know. Do we add some of the other denominational holidays? I'm not advocating for that. I don't know. I just wanted to raise that as a discussion point.
To me, that's a tough one. I mean, because if you start with one, then you add, how many do you add? And then the library's never open.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously extreme, but go ahead.
I think we could change words from Christmas Day. I mean, you could just say holiday closings. And
Holiday observance.
well, that's what we're calling it, though.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Because, you know, Kwanzaa's celebrated on a different day.
Mhm.
Their Yule is celebrated on a different day. So I don't know what else we could call it. I'll think on that.
All right. And yeah, because and just to go back to your point, Anne, if we do one, then we have to do more. But by definition, we've already done one as a Christian, you know, with the
Yeah.
Christian holidays, and
Yeah.
so we've already crossed that line.
Right.
And I don't know if we want to include MLK.
Well, Samantha put that in the chat just now.
Right.
So there have been a couple requests from staff to trade President's Day for Martin Luther King Day. And I do think there's quite a lot of support for that idea. When this came up, it was right after we had approved our holiday schedule for 2021. And it would actually have to be approved by the union as well. So the union did have a meeting recently. Did that come up, Sam?
Yeah, it came up. I think we're going to bring it up at the next contract.
Okay. And it could, you know, the next contract really wouldn't start until 2022, October 1, 2022. So it'd be a little late for 2022 holiday season as well. But I think what John JT, our AFSCME rep, had mentioned was that we could do a letter of agreement with that. The board would obviously have the option of just adding in a closure as well. But I don't know how many additional closure days we would want to have in the schedule. But there are
And,
options there.
and again, I'm not advocating to adding more days to be closed or,
Mhm.
you know, I just, after this discussion of philosophical values, it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a sticky point, and I think it's sticky for many, you know, American businesses and,
Mhm.
you know, places that are open. I mean, Christmas and Easter are such ingrained holidays in our country, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm not saying that we would stay open on Christmas Day,
No, I'm
But-
not advocating for that.
right? But it's also,
I think with Christmas, you could almost say something like winter holiday.
yeah,
I'm having a
Yeah,
I'm having a much harder time coming up with something for Easter because it's just such a weird holiday. It doesn't.
it doesn't have any
anything.
consistent date.
It's tied to the moon calendar. We could call it a moon holiday, a lunar holiday.
it's the it's the what is the equinox?
It's not on that though either.
Oh, right.
No.
Yeah.
But it's not is it the vernal one, or what's yeah, I think anyway.
I think the 24th and 25th, just calling those winter holidays would be a good.
I'd be
Yeah.
prepared for
Compromise.
a little blowback on that too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe a
Patrick.
little more vocal than the people that might wonder why you're calling it Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I'm not saying I'm not willing to let the fur fly, but I would be careful before you start messing around with that stuff.
Yeah.
Not that it should just stay as is. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, something to think on.
Yes. Well, oh, for sure. And yeah, something more all-encompassing. I don't know. I'm just grateful to have the day off. So you can call it whatever you want. Pat not getting up today. Right?
Yeah. I do like winter holiday, but that's just a personal preference. Other questions or comments about holiday observances?
So when are these last four going to be coming up for a vote? We're going to talk about them some more down the road or
Next month.
next month. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
All right, moving on. We have another public comment. Although we've lost a couple participants, so that's okay. Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to old business. The survey is out. Yay.
We're up to 198
Wow.
responses. So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I would really like to get close to 500. We've got people coming in the building now, so hopefully, because they're seeing the handouts and the flyers, maybe we can get, we still have time to, we have till the end of February. So some feedback that I'm getting from these surveys is the hours question is hard. It's hard emotionally, it's hard to know how to answer it just from a logistics standpoint. We struggled a lot, every person, every staff member on this meeting helped to try and craft that question in a way that was not confusing, and it's still confusing. So we tried really hard to create a question that wasn't that was easier for people to answer, but it's just a hard question to ask. And emotionally, it's hard for people because people want all the hours. And so it's hard to make a decision between, you know, access at this time and another time. I will say that we are getting a lot of really great feedback though. Amy and I had just started talking today about looking at getting some gallery exhibits back up. That's some feedback that's coming through pretty strong. People miss art. And so we're talking about, well, where other quarantine options, what other quarantine options do we have for materials? Because, you know, the Huron Mountain Club Gallery is definitely our nicest gallery space. And so if we can figure out a way to quarantine elsewhere so that we can get people looking at art again in the library, I think that would go a long way to helping folks right now cope with all of this change and uncertainty. So there's a lot of really good feedback coming back. I will say there's pretty strong desire to continue with virtual options even post-pandemic. Not every single thing needs to be virtual, but I do think there's interest in some of our programming continuing in a virtual format. So that's good to hear from people. I didn't know if there would be much response to that or not, but there's definitely some interest there. And the same could be said for curbside, but maybe to a lesser degree. That's probably a smaller segment of the population that's interested in continued curbside, but there are some. So it is some interesting results, and I'll be excited to see it all in one place so that we can really dive into the responses and look for trends.
Remind me when it's going to end.
December 28th.
December what?
Right. Oh my gosh. February 28th.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that is a long survey.
I'd get the summer people.
Yeah, so the March meeting, we should have some pretty good data to look at.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if you haven't filled it out yet, please do so.
Yes.
And high accolades to everyone who helped craft that survey. As I went through it, I found the questions to be very thought-provoking, and I really, that was a real heartfelt point of pride for me that our library had produced that kind of deep, thought-provoking questions. So I am grateful to everyone who worked on that. And I also wondered if that survey has gone out to all the donors, you know, as a direct, I don't know, email, mail, something like that.
It has not directly to the donor list. That's something that Heather and I could work on. There is quite a bit of overlap between the email list that the e-newsletters go out to and the donor list, but we can certainly make sure that all of our donors have access to that.
It's a good idea.
Thanks.
Moving on to new business. As I said, we'll do the trustee manual whenever we get our new board member, which could be as early as next month, but that's not guaranteed. So we'll see what happens. Does anybody else have any new business or board member comment tonight?
I'd just like to kind of piggyback on what Andrea was indicating, some of the survey. Most of what I've heard is praise for the curbside and the take-home kits and the virtual programming and how quickly that pivoted. And there are a lot of people that would really like to see that continue, right? In some form, not all of it, like you said, whether it's strictly out of convenience or out of necessity. You know, and yeah, maybe this particular Wednesday, it's easier to zoom into this thing happening rather than the other. Ruby and Sarah were there yesterday, and Ruby brought home another 25 pounds of books. Very short period of time. So as a family, we're grateful for that. And that's just been kind of the thing, is like, well, they're not just going to get rid of that, are they? You know, so, and these are people that aren't, I mean, they have utilized it, but certainly they've already been back in the building since they've been open. So that's where they want to be. but they've just seen the effectiveness of what you guys have done. And just, yeah, I'd like to see parts of that continue.
Right.
Good, thanks. Next up, we have standing reports. Are there questions or comments on the standing reports? I mean, as always, I'm so impressed with everything. You guys do so much hard work, and
I do have to say to Sam that for someone who was off with COVID for half of the month, you sure didn't have to apologize, because you seem like you got a lot done in the first place, and then you only got it done in 2 weeks. Holy smokes.
I'm lucky that I can do some stuff from home, so that helped a lot.
But thanks to everyone, and who just to reiterate what Patrick said, the innovative nature of the staff working together collaboratively is really heartfelt and astounding. Thank you.
yeah, I love the pictures Sarah includes.
If you didn't get pictures, it's because your email wouldn't let me send it to you. So I had to send out the board packet 3 times this month.
I saw that, yeah.
If you didn't
I
take it,
got
would have
all-
been fun.
Thanks. I got each one. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, do we have anything else for the good and welfare of the organization?
Not for me.
Hearing none, may I have a motion for adjournment?
This is Patrick, so moved.
For a second.
And we'll take a roll call vote. Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Patrick, how do you vote?
All right.
This is Ann. I also vote aye. I am adjourning the meeting at 6:23.
I was going to say, if anybody abstained, we would have to stay on.
I don't think I'm.
That's a good point. Never thought about that.